Well, hello, all you NEBA viewers out there in Zoom land. We have a show and tell ready here, and three wonderfully talented artists who have incredibly diverse work. Nancer Ballard, Lorraine Hartin-Gelardi, and Susan Marsh will be showing today. Our first presenter will be Lorraine Hartin-Gelardi. And we'd like to see what you've been up to, Lorraine. It's really nice to have you here and be willing to do this.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is I want to thank you all for showing up. I want to thank you for the invitation. And I really want to thank Christina because I couldn't do anything here today except like hold up my pen and say I have a pen. She has been invaluable to me. Trust me. Trust me. And she's probably sitting there going, oh my God, I never want to work with this woman again. Anyhow, I don't think of myself as a book artist. I think of myself more as a book artist in training. I have been making books for a long time, but it's been a fits and starts type of thing and more of a hobby.
Yep.
A thing, you know, where I get together with some friends and
Why, so I can hear the football?
Pardon?
Hold on. Jane, you need to mute, please.
Oh,
we're hearing some background noise from you. Thank you. Continue.
So I just, the pandemic was kind of a blessing in disguise when it came to book arts because of all those wonderful online courses that I was able to take advantage of. And it allowed me to connect with people in ways I hadn't imagined. And I think I finally got more serious and began to develop ideas that were my own, not just, you know, a form that someone taught me. So anyhow, Christina, if you could show the experiment slide. Okay.
I'm going to make it larger for you.
Okay. Well, look at that. So anyhow, I had this idea when I was in yoga one day, and you know, you're in corpse pose and these things appear in your head. And so I went home and painted a piece of watercolor paper in these beautiful colors. And what was in my mind and what was on the paper were nowhere near each other. It looked a bit like an Easter egg. And I thought, well, that's ugly. I turned it over, painted it, added salt, watercolor paint and salt. And that was even uglier. And that piece of paper sat in my drawer for 4 years. And I came upon a workshop that I took. You can see that there is stenciling. The flowers are stenciling with Laura Beyer. And I had so much fun using stencils. So I just experimented with these old pieces of paper, cut them up, stenciled on them, drew on them. And then I found a book by Rachel Hazel. She's the traveling bookbinder. And I just experimented with a variety of forms. And the reason I'm showing you is that is just a collection of pure fun. I had only fun doing that. Christina, if you can go to the altered book. Oh, yes, this was, sorry, you're right. Laura Beyer gave me some ideas for new structures. It wasn't so much her, but there were a lot of people in the workshop who shared ideas. And this one gentleman gave me an idea for a new structure. So it's basically an accordion, but it's a double fold. And when you unfold it, you've got something inside. And I guess there's one more slide to that.
These are beautiful.
Oh, you're so kind. You really are.
Oh,
so this is, these are 2 Michael stencils. I mean, it's not, I did cut my own stencils, but these were Michael stencils. I played around with them and you might not be able to tell it, but the flower that is a chrysanthemum, and I found an old poem by Thomas Hardy called Chrysanthemum. So I just drew the, hand printed the poem in that.
I think that they have a really interesting dimension, like 3D kind of an effect with the way the layering is.
It was fun.
The handwriting and the text and all is a really nice, it really visually takes you across the page. I think it's a lovely piece.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. It was a lot of fun to do. It just, you know, sometimes when you feel less like you have to have a particular finished product. I think your creative juices and your mind goes in a different way, and that's what happened
Yeah, a
here.
little freer to experiment too, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
lovely.
Exactly. Thank you. About 10 years ago, if you go to the altered book one, and we'll just quickly go through that one. That was when altered books were a big deal, I guess. Everybody was doing them. And I spent a summer, I took an old book, I watercolored the pages, and every day I would go out and draw something from my garden. And so over the course of the summer, I completely filled the book with drawings and collage. So that's, and I think there's one more slide with that particular presentation.
So are we seeing the original text on the page through some of these images? Is that what we're
Yep,
saying?
you
Very
are,
cool.
you are,
Yeah,
yeah.
so found.
What was the
image-
original book?
Yeah.
I don't
I
remember.
was just gonna ask that. Good question.
It's a good question. I don't remember. I mean, I have the book. I can run up and get it after, but offhand, I don't remember.
Is it
So
a book of poetry?
no, it actually, is it? Maybe.
Because
I'm sorry. That's a dense, I should have been more prepared for that. I
No,
honestly
no,
don't know.
that's all right. I mean, those are the things that slip away because it doesn't really matter. But
No,
the
and
type looks very organized on the page and they,
it
Yeah,
does.
and it
doesn't
seems
it?
like the margins are tight, or the
Yeah.
text is in a tighter column, which makes you
Yeah.
also feel like it might be poetry too. But
It might be.
I love the transparency of your layers.
Wow.
There, yeah.
Yeah,
This
it
is
was it
gorgeous.
was a book that was, you can see on the first slide way over in the
Okay, as soon as I
corner.
put those in the oven. I'll get back,
It was a
okay?
book,
Want
the
to do the
reason
spinner
I
one more
chose
time?
it was because it was a
Let's
book
do
in
spinner one
one of
more
those
time.
library book sales, and it had somebody had written their names in the front, and I thought, well, that's kind of cool. So, and then the next presentation is something called Doodling Around. I am a doodler, and I saw this form, I hate to confess, on Pinterest. And so this took me quite a while to do. It is just canson paper cut into different shapes, but all of the shapes, it's line drawings. And it was a very meditative, it was kind of like Paul Klee, who says, take a line for a walk and see what happens. And this was a lot of lines taken for a lot of walks. And colors and shapes, and then I just bound them all together. So I think
love
there's
it.
Oh,
The
thank you.
texture of the paper is really coming through in your photographs. Nice.
yeah, and then I think there's one more slide with that one.
Ooh.
Okay,
Can I
Yeah,
just interrupt? Someone
Please.
in the group still is not muted and there's background noise from somebody. So if you could please put yourself on mute, everyone who's not either Lorraine, me, and Christina, that would be great. Thank you.
so this is just, sort of hopefully a detailed look at some of the drawing. If we go to mending, I think we can skip imitation, Christina, and just go to mending. Thank you. So I'm like every one of you, I imagine. You have all those bits and pieces of paper and things you've experimented with, and you're like, what in heaven's name am I going to do with all of this? And I get together, or at least did prior to the pandemic, with a bunch of dear friends and just make books or sometimes other things. And I had a bunch of paper. And I started stitching the paper together into sort of collages, and I didn't really like them. So I ripped them all up and started all over again. And I like to stitch. And so I stitched paper onto other paper and made a series of small collages, and then put them together with a poem called Mending. And so it was a a transparent page with part of the poem. And then, as you can see, these stitched pieces. And I wanted to make sure that everybody saw the back of the mending, because I think that's what mending is about. Yes, you have a front piece that you try and make scraps look better or hold things together, but the unseen part is equally beautiful. So I think there are
Oh,
two. Yeah.
This is lovely, especially with the transparency with the words on them. Well done.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And some of the paper, it was just fun to do. It was really fun to do. It was, again, one of those experiments that came about.
Yeah, that
Um,
feels really good. I would
yeah.
like to touch it, and the tactile kind of feel. Of
Well,
it
that is one of the disadvantages. I mean, this Zoom thing is absolutely wonderful, but books are meant, at least this one in particular, is meant to be held and touched, and your finger is supposed to rub across the stitches so you can feel it.
We do get a pretty good sensation in your photographs. Again, your lighting is helping with the tactile kind of quality of them.
Good.
Should we go to landscape of memory?
Yes, let's go to landscape. So for years, I struggled with how to get content into books, and came across 2 workshops that I took with a woman by the name of Radha Pani, who is a fabulous paper maker, book artist, and a wonderful teacher. And I'm a storyteller and a writer, and it oddly never occurred to me to just sit down and free write so I could get some ideas for books. I have long been interested in the subject of memory, how it shifts. And so for this book that we were, for this exercise and this is just a mock-up of something I wanted to do regarding memory. I came across some old photographs of my family. I came across a poem. I did some writing. I titled this The Landscape of Memory. So it is old photographs that I manipulated them in Word. You can't tell, but that house is a transparent piece of paper. I was trying to make like a star book or a carousel book, but there were several things that hampered me. I couldn't get it all to fit. And I was working with Word, so I couldn't get the images to print except on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So I just had to keep cutting and manipulating. There are hinges. It was a fun book to do. So if you just scroll through the pictures, you'll see that it can be seen as a carousel or a star book. It can be laid out in a linear fashion. There are layering. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. The thing that was interesting for me was trying to get a closure. I wanted to do something different. And I actually used little, I don't know what those round things are called, little things.
It's a piano. It's a variation of a piano.
That's
hinge,
it. It's
right?
a variation of piano hinge. My father was a carpenter, so I used nails to hold
So here
it
you
together.
can see it in the first one. You can really see it clearly, and that's on either side to keep it
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
It sounds like the hurdles that you stumbled across led you to really create some interesting solutions.
Yeah.
That was the best learning experience of this, was that every single time I came up against the computer problems, I mean, technology and I are not really good friends. I was forced to come up with an idea to make it work. And it actually, was worked out pretty well, but there was a lot of frustration. And I have about 40 pieces, in various stages. So anyhow.
You mean of this theme and the family?
Yeah. And this
40
is just,
of them. Wow.
Yeah, well, bits and pieces, I've got this page and that page and 5 of those pages and 6 of those and 2 of those and, just a stack of stuff. But this is just a mock-up. I have several ideas because of this exercise, and I have done a lot of reading, including Sally Mann's book, Hold Still, which was really, really valuable regarding photography and memory. It taught me a lot.
Fantastic.
Yep. And then
I've
yes, we should move on to something
Because we have
called
quite a
leaf
bit
print.
still. Yeah,
This is these are
yeah,
gorgeous.
these are fascinating. Yeah.
You guys are great. You should come to my house, and every once in a while, just I'm gonna take this recording and I'm gonna play it when you keep saying that.
Where
Thank
do
you.
you live? I'm coming.
Okay, I live in Beacon, New York. It's a fun little
Oh,
town. Please come
Oh,
down.
yeah. I know exactly where you live.
Oh, good.
Oh, my gosh. All right.
So for several years, I have been doing in the summertime, doing eco printing, I guess is what they call it, taking leaves and flowers and jamming them between pieces of paper and then boiling them. And this year, I actually had more success than I've ever had before. I tried some different techniques, which was wrapping paper and leaves around a stick. And instead of boiling for 3 hours, I steamed for an hour and a half. I added iron water to the leaves. I made concoctions. Oh my gosh, you should see my garage. And well, I'll tell you a story about it when we get to the next one. But this was a variety of prints made from oak leaves and grapevine leaves. And I was experimenting with a particular kind of closure. And I found this quote at the back of the New York Times book review. A photographer took a line or a paragraph from Ovid's Metamorphoses. And I just loved the way it explained what I was doing. Nothing retains its original form, but nature, the goddess of all renewal, keeps altering one shape into another. Nothing at all in the world can perish. You have to believe me, things merely vary and change their appearance. And so I just put together the prints in sort of a concertina booklet, sewed them together, added a stick and some string for a closure. And when I showed it to my husband, he goes, "Oh, that's good, Lorraine. It's very cute." He said, "It's just nature in a book." So yeah.
Oh,
no,
it's so much more than cute.
I was gonna say the word cute is not.
I
really
know,
right.
you
I don't
know.
think I would have
It's-
chosen that. It's
Yeah.
very
Extraordinary.
very powerful. There's sorrow, there's death and possible renewal and remembrance, and there's all kinds of stuff going on there.
And that's why this echo printing, and I guess we can go to the last 3 PowerPoints. And I think the best thing to do, Christina, is just slideshow through them. I'm not gonna
I
stop.
don't know if it'll let me do a whole bunch at once since we
Well, why
haven't
don't you just do
really-
the first one and we'll see how we are on time. I don't want to take up anybody else's time.
Let's just
so
see if it'll put them all in the same folder.
I don't know.
Oh my goodness, is it doing it?
I don't know. It looks like it's doing
It
it.
looks like it might. Oh, it's just opening all the windows at the same time. Okay, never mind.
Okay, well, you're the
that's all
tech
Yeah,
right.
but
wizard.
at least they're up.
Yeah, they're up. That's fine. I mean, it'll make it
Yeah.
go a little bit faster.
Yeah, just, just.
I'll go quicker. That's all.
That's all, just go quicker. So this idea of the echo printing, the leaf printing and memory, it became evident to me that I was searching for the essence of things. And I came across a quote that described echo printing as a form of ordinary alchemy. And I started looking into what alchemy is, and it makes sense that the way I'm looking at memory and the way I'm looking at these leaf prints is that it is, you can see that line, the elixir of longevity. It's a form of transmutations. It's a form of altering something to get to its essence and to preserve it. And so I think that is exactly what was happening. And so I had all these prints and I've put them together in 3 separate volumes called Alchemy, Alchemical Observations, and the Art of Transmutation. And I think they just kind of speak for themselves. I find it's a delightful process because you're continually surprised and there are different ways of doing things, but I find that the images are haunting at times.
Very much so.
And they have a sense of longing, they have a sense of loss, but they also have a sense of hanging on. It's what do you hang on to? What do you let go of? And I think all of that is sort of present without, at least that's how it speaks to me. So whether I'm getting that across or whether I even need to get that across. I think everything that you do, people interpret in their own fashion. Yeah.
Really
so-
love the design of this.
Oh, thank you.
It's a really nice, it's a really beautiful graphic design
Oh, well,
experiment as well, with the type and the rhythm of the pages, and stunning.
it was really, I've been working on this, I think, for 3 months, or more. But, yeah, if you want to go to the alchemical observations and just quickly go through them, and then I think I'm kind of done.
Wow, good
Well, we'll have to
job.
open it up to people asking questions.
Sure. Yeah.
I love this paper on the right. I've seen that tissue before. and
Isn't that a lovely
That's a
paper?
lovely tissue. It goes perfectly with your handwriting and your ideas here, the choppy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Sure
was a lot of
does.
pulling things out and putting them back together, but I just love the images. And every time you unwrap, you wind the paper around something, or you slap it between 2 tiles, you have this expectation. I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden you open it up and it's like Christmas. There's these beautiful images that you really were not instrumental in doing. You just happen to kind of play around, and this is what happens. So, yeah. So the thing I was going to tell you, I used iron water for the first time. I found rusty bits and pieces, which you can find in walking along the streets, put them into a jar with vinegar and water. And, you leave it there for a couple of days and you get this rusty looking water. Well, I left it there all summer long, and I would use it various times with work that I was doing, but it sort of began to bubble and erupt, kind of like I'm this magician with a magic potion. And at one point, my husband went out into the garage where I'm doing this, and he said, Lorraine, I think you need to be a little more careful. It's oozed out and eaten a hole in the concrete of our floor.
Oh.
Yeah. But it doesn't seem to be eating the paper, so I don't really know what's going on there.
I like the you're bringing back the stitch again.
I
here.
love
Yeah.
stitching on paper. My original idea was to use more of it when I was doing it, but I couldn't find a way to keep the images whole without stitching over them. Although I think I've got some more prints, I might try stitching over them and see what happens.
That tissue that has the little sprinkled white in it.
Yeah.
Each one of those looks like a stitch. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it
It
does
was
feel-
fun. Yeah, it was fun trying to find the right papers to kind of go with the, and we all have tons of paper stashed away, as we
Too
all
much,
know.
probably.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem to stop me from either buying more or thinking about making more.
no,
Doesn't at all, but somebody's got to keep people in business.
oh, nice typography.
Thank you.
That's very playful.
Yeah.
That's
It was kind of fun.
that's a nice one. Yeah.
And this gold paper is something I got from, I think, Talus. It's a metallic paper. And because alchemy is all about gold, the alchemists were trying to turn base metals into gold. I decided to try to use the gold paper and see what would happen. And it's really quite interesting. It came off on the leaves that I used. Whatever gold was in the paper came off. And this, you can't really get a good sense of it from the photograph, but it has a metallic feel to it. It's crinkly, and the paper was completely changed in the process of steaming it. And the gold came off into other pieces of paper that I was working on. So it was really kind of an interesting thing to do.
I like your choice of this Ingress paper. It's
Yeah.
like hand-wheel Ingress with the screen. That's it's a laid paper that's made on a screen, and you can see that screen texture. It kind of
Yeah.
almost feels like fabric, sort of.
It actually, when you have it in your hand, some of these papers really do feel like fabric. The one behind the gold, that white one there that is stitched on, that does feel like fabric. And a matter of fact, I took a white piece of paper, and you'll see it in a minute, and dipped it completely in iron water, and then dipped the leaves in iron water, and the transformation, it's right here, this one on the right. I mean, I wasn't sure I was going to use it at first because it turned the
Wow.
paper almost black, but it's
Yeah.
really, when you see it in person, it's very moody. And
Yeah, these
um,
are extremely moody. Yeah, I like that
yeah.
about them.
yeah.
Oh my
And, you know,
goodness.
I went in with just colored pencil to kind of highlight the images that were there, which is some of the things that I did in this particular volume. So I've got these 3 volumes. They have yet to be bound. I was going to bind them and use one of Rachel Hazel's type of bindings, but I'm also toying with the idea of putting them in a box because Radhapani was talking about pacing, and I thought, if it's all one volume, you know, people are going to be like, oh, that again, another leaf. Whereas if you have to reach into a box and pull out a separate volume, it might change your appreciation and slow you down a bit. So anyhow.
I think that idea of putting these in a box is brilliant. I mean, they need to be together.
Yeah. And I need to learn how to make a box. So that's another, you know, this is the
Yeah.
thing you find yourself doing. You're like,
Yes.
okay, well, that's a great idea, but now I got to learn how. So I'm going to have to take up box making.
It's a good skill to have.
It is, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Aren't you teaching a box making
I
class?
am. I'm teaching one coming up. Yeah.
It's in January, right?
No, I think it's farther down the road. I think it might be in Marsh.
Is that in Lex Art?
Yeah, it's a 4-week look at box making. Yeah. Wow.
Hmm.
It's a good one. Yeah. It covers like traditional box making for bookbinders, as
Uh-huh.
well as how to just process breaking down templates. Like I see other people's structures around me that I want to replicate. And so I
Uh-huh.
show you the skills on how to like engineer or copy boxes that you see. And then we'll also have a day where we're going to alter I have a weird assortment of boxes for people to alter one day. So the 4 days will be fun. Yeah, it'll be a good month.
How far are you from Boston?
It's Lexington, which is the loop, that goes around Boston. So it's not
Oh,
in
okay.
Boston, it's in Lexington, Massachusetts.
No, my daughter lives in Boston, so I was toying with the idea of going to visit her and coming to see you.
Yeah,
So-
Lexington is about 10 minutes outside of Boston, maybe?
Oh, okay. Which
15
means for
minutes,
those
maybe?
of us who from out of town, it's going to take us an hour because we're going to get lost 4 times.
It
Maybe
depends on what
45
part of
minutes.
town she's in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just teasing you. Every
Yeah.
time I drive to
you
Boston, I get
know,
lost.
If you want to be housed, you can come to me. I'm 45 minutes from Lexington.
Oh,
So
well, you're so kind. Thank
you
you.
come and stay with me.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you again for taking the time to
Oh.
listen and watch.
Thank
Let's
you, Lorraine.
invite everyone to make some comments if they feel like they had something that particularly struck them.
And Lorraine, check your chat because you just got some rave reviews in chat.
Oh, thank
um,
you.
Yeah, this was terrific. Any questions from anyone? Unmute yourself and then let's see if we can, let me get up a gallery. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say?
All right.
All right.
Well, I think everyone's so bowled over by the beauty.
Oh,
that
thank
well,
you.
there-
That's
So
everyone-
dying was haunting.
Everyone's
Oh,
face is kind of like,
Yeah.
so. Yeah,
Thank you.
really. Oh, Lorraine, thank you for taking the time to share these
Very
exquisite.
nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you,
they are
Christina, for
You're
all your
welcome.
help.
You're
very
welcome.
inspiring and very just really to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So our next presenter will be Nancer Ballard. And she's going to show us something totally different because she has a headspace that is so beautifully brilliant. And we're really looking forward to this, Nancer. So hit it.
All right, all right. I'm gonna share my screen. Christina, can I just go ahead and do it?
I made you a host, so you're good.
Okay. All right, now I have to start the slideshow. So while this is starting up, I just want to thank everybody for coming. And that was very inspirational, Lorraine. And I think you'll see some overlap between what you and I do. Okay, let me see. Does this work? Yes. Okay. So I came to book arts as a writer, and I was also a photojournalist in college. And so I don't have any formal graduate school training in visual arts, but I have studied book arts over the last decade with Ann Pelican of the Museum School, Carol Barton at Haystack, who also teaches at the New School, and Sonia Almeida of Brandeis University. And I've also been in an arts group with Ann Pelican for decades. So I've seen her artist books for a long time. But I consider myself a forever beginner because I'm always trying to do something for which I don't really have the skills needed to be incredibly proficient. But I plow ahead anyway and keep learning. I'm particularly interested in artist books about subjects that don't seem susceptible to words, because if it's susceptible to words, then I'm a writer. Many of the books that I make involve social justice issues or psychological mysteries. Today, I'm going to show you a couple of my early books, 2 social justice projects, and at least one artist book that began as a psychological inquiry and a work in progress. So I became a book artist in somewhat of an unusual way. In 2013, I ran the Boston Marathon as a charity runner on behalf of the American Liver Foundation, and that was the year of the bombing. I ended up in Kenmore Square, but several of my teammates were on the finish line when the bombs exploded. Neither any of my family nor my teammates were physically hurt, but in the aftermath of the event, I couldn't find words to adequately express my experience. So I began working on what would become a series of 5 artist books. This is one of them called Muscle Memory. It's an accordion book of 14 panels with 6 3-dimensional inserts. The accordion depicts the linear narrative of the marathon run, while the inserts tell the counter narrative of the bombing reaction and the aftermath. My goal was to evoke the sense of participating in such an iconic run, and at the same time, the fractured, unfathomable sense of tragedy, which, like most other large-scale disasters, include unexpected kindness, individual effort, concerted action, community helplessness, and a unifying resolve not to succumb to terror. The main accordion book depicts the marathon runners in color, as you just saw. And for the inserts, I washed out the color in Photoshop to represent the rough, sketchy nature of what we as runners and the spectators knew about what was happening at the time. The images were then lightly recolored to highlight the confusing, impressionistic way that our minds record information while we were in crisis. All of the images were either taken by my niece, who was watching the marathon and watching me, or me the day after the event. This inset is a National Guard officer in Cleveland Circle, and she didn't know what she was taking, but my niece was taking it as he heard about the bombing in real time. The other inserts include the news media camping out at Boston Common the next day as the police were hunting for suspects, volunteers from the Boston Athletic Association trying to reassemble runners' bags that had been ransacked by the bomb-sniffing dogs, a police officer trying to restrain a bomb-sniffing dog, and one of the runners writing on one of the memorial and hope signs that were posted on Boylston Street once the street was reopened after the bombing. So this is that last one. I'm not going to show you all of the marathon books today, but I'll show you one more called Remains of the Day. The Boston Marathon isn't a loop course. In other words, you don't start and end in the same place like you do for most runs. It's kind of a ribbon. So that means that the runners are all bused to the starting line in Hopkinton. And we were given a yellow bag for our belongings, and with a number on the bag that corresponds to our bib. And so they take us out to Hopkinton, and we're out there for hours in what's called the Runner's Village, which is really a huge field waiting for our wave. And so once your wave starts to come up, you put all your belongings. In my case, it was my camera and not my camera, my phone and my wallet and my reading glasses back into your bag, and you put it on the bus, and the buses take it back into Copley Square, and you pick it up after the race. But when the bombs went off, the police didn't know if they were being set off remotely from a phone or some other device inside one of the buses or the bags. So they shut down all the self-service in Boston, and they took out all of the bags from the buses, and they spread them all over Copley Square, and took everything out, and then had the bomb sniffing dogs come in. After the police finished their work, the Boston Athletic Association workers tried to reassemble these thousands of bags and brought them to an armory so that runners could come and identify their belongings. So the next day, after weaving my way through tanks and National Guard checkpoints, I found my way to the armory to look for my belongings. All of the bags lined up across the floor of this giant room looked to me like body bags. I didn't have my phone, but I had brought my camera with me, and I took one picture before the exhausted Boston athletic workers forbid photographs. This book was constructed from that one photograph I used a modified zine structure. The title comes from Kazuo Ishiguro's novel, Remains of the Day. I also collaged a line from the novel. In that moment, my heart was breaking. Onto the photograph in torn scraps of paper to signify the debris after the bombing and the shredding of memory. I then added the words, in that moment, I was searching for a way, and included 3 windows in the last 3 pages that could be opened and closed to represent mental groping towards wholeness. The first window completes the sentence, in that moment, I was searching for a way to go back. But of course, going back to before the bombing was impossible. The second window says to go home, which is sort of like what a child who's completely overwhelmed says, I just want to go home. But Boston felt like a very foreign place, and we didn't know if it would ever return to what had been before. Reminds me now of the feeling that we have a little bit about the pandemic. The last window completes the thought with to go forward, which is kind of a commitment to believe there will be a future, even if you don't know what it will look like. The next piece, called We Have Always Worked, was made a few years later, probably 4 years later. This piece was inspired by my frustration at hearing so many intelligent people claim that women only began to enter the workforce during World War II. Whenever I'd hear this, I'd say, what are you talking about? What about all the African American who've been working since the country was founded? What about the Lowell mill workers, and on and on? So I wanted to develop a piece that would really feature the variety of occupations that women have had over time and across the globe. And as I began to research, I realized that women throughout the world have played important roles in almost any occupation you can possibly imagine. And I found this old spice rack at our transfer station, and I thought that with a coat of paint, it might work to use for a piece on women's work, since a lot of women's work is associated with the kitchen. And the spice rack would provide a frame for 20 interactive pages that the viewer could turn, because I wanted to make the piece very interactive. So each page has an image of a woman at work on one side and an explanation of the image and information about the field that she's in on the other side. You can see like the second row down, the first one on the left of the farmer, you can see it sort of turned a little bit. And you'll see more in a second. So the top row depicts women in industry and trades. The first image is water carriers, which is the oldest and probably most critical occupation of all time. And carrying water has mostly been done by women throughout time. And then the top, there are also forgers, mine workers, and carpenters from Belgium to Mexico, the US, and Saudi Arabia. The second row depicts women in agriculture, food science, and hospitality. The third row focuses on mathematics, economics, labor, and spiritual leader. Fourth row on women in the arts, and the fifth row on journalists, first responders, athletes, and mortuary science. In all, more than 100 different occupations are represented across time and different cultures. On the right, you can see the way that the book is put together. Each of the images, some of the images I took, and some of the images are very well-known images. Some of the people are very well-known, and many are not. And so you can see how the pages swivel. They're attached to the frame with bookbinding thread and eye hooks so that they can move freely within the frame. And I don't know if the way your screen is set up, you can see that in the rightmost one, you can see one that's completely turned over if you move the people's pictures up.
So they just spin.
Well, they don't
Right.
spin, but they can turn readily. Yes. A reader
Okay,
can
so
turn them
you
back
turn
and
it
forth.
one way and then it goes back to the other way. I mean, it goes back. So
No, you have to turn it physically back and forth.
yes, yes, but it's back and forth. Yes.
Right, right.
Oh, so neat.
So they're the photos are printed on thick matte photo paper, and then some of them are digitally enhanced to make it more interesting. And then the images and the text are mounted on book board so that they don't wear out, so that they can be turned many, many times. So my intention, and you can see the amount of text, some of them have a lot of text on the back and some don't have very much. My intention was to make it interesting to those who knew very little about women in work, but also to make it interesting to the most sophisticated person who could learn something new about it. And that piece actually got a lot of good reviews. So then I decided to try the same format again, but of course, not the same. So this is one on a much larger scale that I did in collaboration with a fine arts post-baccalaureate student at Brandeis University. And this time the subject is climate change. So Nick Calistrano, who was the graduate student I worked with, built this 9-foot by 9-foot 25 pane frame in the university workshop while I was researching all different kinds of human-driven climate change, weather, crops, animals, ecosystems, natural resources, etc. And then we sanded and lacquered the frame, and then we divvied up the topics, and we each made about 14 double-sided pages or panes with an image about some aspect of climate change on one side and research-based text on the other. The images include photographs, line drawings, collage, embroidery, painting, found objects, ink transfer, printmaking, wood burning, clay, and embroidery. So we kind of did everything we could think of. And the topics include flooding, wildfires, displacement of people, contributions by industrialized nations, various forms of extreme weather in different regions of the United States, and threats to animals and animal habitats. And then on this side, you can see, obviously the pages are much bigger, so we had a lot more room to fill things out. And so again, you can see that they're mounted on bookboard and they sort of swivel within their frames. And so
I
this
like
one,
the shadow print underneath the text. That's a nice addition.
right, that corresponds to what's on the front, and it made it
Yeah.
a little bit less, texty on the back.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice way to handle that. Yeah.
Okay. And so this one was originally, we got a grant to make it as part of the Social Justice Festival at Brandeis, and then it's also been shown in a gallery in Brighton as part of the Unbound Visual Arts exhibition. And you can see how big it is because there's a picture of me with it next to it. The next, I have 2 books, but I think I may skip one for time reasons. But the next 2 books are called Synecdoche and Butterfly's Dream. And I was going to deal with them as a pair because they have a similar accordion structure, and they both examine empathy and subjective truth in our experience of reality. But I think I'd be happy enough to see one because then I want to do the work in progress. So Synecdoche is a literary figure of speech. That means when you refer to part of something to represent the whole. And this book was originally inspired by a postcard that I had from the 1930s that showed a little girl and sitting next to an elephant that was part of a traveling circus. And it was also inspired by that folktale, which probably most of you know, about a group of blind men who come upon an elephant, and each feels a different part of the elephant, and thinks the one who feels the tail thinks the elephant is like a rope, and one who feels the ear thinks it's like a big leaf, and one who feels the trunk, thinks, oh no, an elephant's like a water spout. And in the Indian version of it, a wise man comes along and says that the only way to know the truth is to envision all the parts. So that little story about the elephant, and so this piece is called Sunadoshi, the manifold nature of truth. And the little story about the elephants is kind of in the front piece. And then what I did was I took the postcard and I digitally reproduced, enlarged, and slightly colorized different aspects of that single postcard of the small girl sitting beside the elephant that's part of the traveling circus. And on one side, the images are sepia toned, and the viewer sees the contact between the girl and the elephant from the point of view of the elephant. For example, the girl's hand on the elephant's hide, I then overprinted with the picture of the elephant hide again. So it would give the viewer the impression of the elephant's felt experience of the girl's touch, because the elephant can't, she's touching the back, so he can't feel it. So you get that sense. And then the last image on this side, the girl is leaning against him and resting her head on his backside. The images on the other side of the accordion have a slightly bluish cast to differentiate them from the perspective of the elephant on the front. And the first image is the girl, is the bottom of the picture of the girl where she's tipping her chair because she's sitting on a stool, and on the stool. And I want to give the idea of that she now wants to get closer to the elephant because she's sort of attracted to this big animal. In the third image, she looks at a distant building over the side of the seated elephant. And in the fourth, her hand reaches out to touch the elephant and then to hug him. And then there's a final zoomed out shot that shows the scene in its entirety. I can go back to just so you can see it. This is just obviously the one side. The accordion format worked well because it unfolds and has like a progressive feel to it, which fits the intangible, progressive, unfolding nature of empathy and also unspoken relationship. And of course, the accordion is great for depicting two different but related points of view, since it can be viewed from either side and read in either direction. So how am I doing for time? Because I do want to do the work in progress, which is like another 5 minutes. So should I skip right to that?
I'd say you should continue.
Yeah, include the next book.
All right. Okay. It's fairly short. I just want to make sure Susan has enough time for her. So, okay. So this one is called The Butterfly's Dream. And it's a transformation material thing. So I'm sure Lorraine will find this resonates with her work. And it's, this is also the same sort of idea. So The Butterfly's Dream seeks to visually depict an old Chinese legend involving the philosopher Chow Chow. And that story is he dreamt he was a butterfly happily fluttering around, aware only of his own happiness at being a butterfly. And then he wakes up and he doesn't know whether he's a man dreaming he was a butterfly or he was a butterfly dreaming he's a man. So this has always intrigued me, but I never really kind of understood it. I think I first heard this story in high school and I didn't know what to make of it. So to explore it, I collected a whole bunch of little tiny natural objects like plants, feathers, pebbles from my yard and neighborhood, and then a few deceased bees, grasshoppers, and a butterfly that I'd found in my garage. And a long time ago, I was giving a little miniature book by a teacher that I thought would also work to create an ambiguity of scale. So I took all these objects and then I created groups that would create ambiguities of scale. And then I put them on my computer scanner and I took lots of scans and I played with different light sources to suggest sunlight and the extremely shallow depth of field you get when you put things on a scanner that are 3D helps to suggest a dreamlike quality. So I experimented around until I found some shots that could suggest either the thought pattern of a butterfly exploring or a person closely examining a natural object. There isn't a distinct back and front to this book because the philosopher isn't clear about which is which. And so the narrative flow is held together by repetition and the suggested movement of various objects throughout the piece or throughout the book. The miniature book grounds the reader in the possibility that the narrator or the bookmaker might be a person rather than a butterfly, because we're used to imagining books to be fairly large. While the narrow field of vision and the shallow depth of field that the scanner gives you are intended to suggest the perspective of a butterfly. Okay, on to the my work in progress, which might be a total failure, but Lorraine has inspired me to keep going on it. So this piece, it started out as an exploration about how malleable and at times contradictory our sense of self is. Our self as subjects or doers, our sense of witnesses or perceivers of things, and then receivers of action, either victims or beneficiaries of other people's actions, and how we situate ourselves and others in relation to time and space. A fairly small topic. I didn't know anyone who'd written comprehensively on it, but I had lots of different examples in literature of how self, others, and history and future interact. So I set up a premise in which there's a fictional character, which I call the mental ventriloquist, who's going on a psychic village, sort of like psychological spelunking or going into a cave, in search of all the different ways in which you can relate to yourself, others, and both of these in time and space. I use the idea of a fictional explorer with slightly antiquated diction to give the project some concreteness and a sense of magic, and to de-emphasize the cerebral nature of the inquiry, which I don't think I've totally accomplished yet. So it begins with a logbook to give the mental ventriloquist a personality, in which he records his travels. So it starts out with, "It has become increasingly clear to me that I have reached the moment in my development as a mental ventriloquist when I must forsake my wanderings and embark on a more rigorous journey." And then I'll just drop down to the second to the last paragraph on the left. "I shall journey from the often invisible instantiation of self, the position from which the perceiver begins to focus his mental powers, to the places where the mind's eye and heart's hunger pursue our deepest goals and longings, and then endeavor to reach the hidden places beyond meaning. I expect the journey to be long and perilous, invigorating and painful, but I endeavor to see it through to the end." The logbook is designed to orient the viewer to the task of changing the perspectives, changing perspectives as you go through the different realms, and includes, so the logbook includes a small accordion called the perceiver, which demonstrates how perception always involves the perceiver, and how perception often tells you as much about the perceiver as it does about the object being perceived. And you can see the three sort of topic pocketbooks in the back, and then here's another kind of version of the array. So the mental ventriloquist and the viewer are now set off on their journey into these three volumes, or what I call the realms. The first is the I position, and that then includes some smaller books, which are currently set up as zine books: Central Perception, Surreal, Standing in Relationship, Presence and Psychopermeability, and some others. And each of the positions is illustrated by these zines, which contain multiple excerpts from novels, essays, or poems, or art that exemplify the aspect of consciousness that's being explored. The topics in volume 2 concern the other. So the volume 1 is the I position. Volume 2 is then how you relate to the other, and includes things like longing, obsession, lust, objectifying others. Here you can see all the books laid out.
Mhm.
And then volume 3 adds to this mix context and absence of felt context and subconscious meaning, and includes zines on meaning making, patterns and signs, nothingness or annihilation, and time beyond meaning. So throughout the exploration, the mental ventriloquist returns to report on his experience to sort of ground the reader in where you are, or the viewer. And then in the last notation of the logbook, the mental ventriloquist writes that he or she, because it's kind of an ambiguous, not ambiguous, androgynous figure, is returning to a place of time beyond meaning, and that if she isn't able to return to finish her report in volume 3 or realm 3, she hopes some future mental ventriloquist will come along and complete the task, which is designed to give kind of the viewer an open-ended sense of the whole thing. the project draws on philosophy, mindfulness principles of impermanence, interdependence, and insubstantial nature of the self, scientific differences between left and right hemisphere, and more than 50 different pieces of art and literature, which illustrate different possible relationships between self, other, and a larger sense of context. As I was working on this, I sort of struggle with the intellectual aspects of it. So I'm thinking that what I need to do is create a physical doll to sort of kind of a steampunk androgynous doll to represent the mental ventriloquist, and then perhaps incorporate a game board to provide kind of a blueprint so that you can look down on it and to orient the reader in terms of the 30 different explorations of consciousness. Of course, I never had any intention to turn into Julie Chen, but that seems like where it might be going. Although
Yeah, I was
not
gonna
like
say
that.
maybe a map
Yeah.
structure as like the base of your game board sort of idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
just so
all
you
the
have
levels
it.
of complexity that you have to this. This is fascinating. And I love how strongly you've embraced the zine. Yay.
Yeah, so this is probably not going to be the ultimate materials, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just kind of just the mock-up. So people have wildly different opinions about it. Some people think it's way too dense and abstract. Some people think it's brilliant. Some people love the literary quotes, but you know, I'm trying to build a book that it's hard to hold in your mind, which kind of brings me back to the very problem I had when I started the Boston Marathon project. So I'm going to stop here, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. And if you're interested in reviewing the prototype and giving me feedback as I move forward, I'd love to exchange homemade pumpkin bread for a critique.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much. And I'm
Nancer,
gonna
these
stop
are
there.
amazing. So you proved my premise correct, that this is, Nancer has a mind that is superior and a superior human mind. And I really love comparing my childlike mind to yours in my own, while you're presenting this. You scare me. But I'm so
well, I
glad.
love you, Carolyn, because you
I'm
always
so
ask
glad
what's
that
on
there
your
are
mind.
people in the world who think like you do, and that you've turned all this brain power into artwork blows me away.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
everybody blows
amazing.
me away. So I appreciate everyone. And
Thank you for sharing it.
I
just
like
feel
the
there's-
complexity of it. And I think when you hand somebody something too easily, sometimes they don't stay with it as long, maybe, as they should or could. And I like your idea of coming up with some kind of character for this your mental ventriloquist. And it could be part of maybe the logo that ties through, you know, somehow. I don't know, maybe.
And
I don't know.
I want you to know that I have just subscribed to a little altered doll online series. It's a, you know, and I'm happy to share that with you.
oh, that'd be great. So email me afterwards. But I'm conscious of really wanting to see Susan's work.
Yes, but
Absolutely.
and I want you to check the chat too, Nancer, because there's a lot of, I mean, regular words just don't relate to you.
Well, if you don't like complexity, you're not going to like my work. If you do like complexity.
I love it. I love it because I love things that I can't do, and I can't do that. So I'm just, oh, wow. So before I go speechless, I would like to introduce Susan Marsh as our third presenter. And she's going to be a third vastly different view on her own book arts. So here you go, Susan, take all the time you want.
Well, thank you. And yes, this is definitely going for a change here. Nancer, that was incredible. I love your thoughts and the depth that you go into your work is just really exquisite. So and thank you. So yes, I'm Susan Marsh and I live in Salem, Mass. I was an architect for over 20 years and then I taught 5th and 6th grade for about 10 years. And I taught everything and ultimately kind of narrowed it down to just science. I retired right before the pandemic, which is very fortunate because I have no clue how you would do science labs, and
Yeah.
I don't know how my colleagues are doing it. My heart goes out to them all. Um, I have not been doing book arts really that long, maybe only 5 or 6 years. So I'm hoping that this will inspire other people who haven't been doing it very long to share their work as well. When I taught, I discovered Susan Gaylord's books for making books with kids, and I've made lots of books with my students and really enjoyed it. And when I needed to find a creative outlet to kind of deal with all the stress, I decided that book arts would be the one for me because I love books and I like art, and I don't have a lot of wall space and a lot of storage space, but I have lots of bookshelves. So that was the direction I went. And I had signed up for a Art New England class with Julia Leonard. And right before I went, I kind of panicked and thought, I've never made a book. I don't know, like a real book. I don't know if this is really what I want to do. So I took a class with Alice Stan at Mass College of Art and just fell in love with it. And I said, yes, this is for me. And I love Alice and she's awesome. So I went to Art New England with my mom, and Julia was amazing. And so I'm going to show you some of my first books, and then let's see if I can share my screen. Okay. So the first book that I made, we were given, it was a very complex challenge. We had just learned how to make lots of different pamphlet stitch books, and we had to choose one of those, and then we had to write down the first 100 words that came into our head on little pieces of paper, little tiny pieces of paper, and then we could sort them in all different ways possible. And then we chose 7 or 8 of those words to tell a story. And so with that story, we had to have a visual representation for each of the words, and every page had to be a different size. So this is what I came up with. The book is called Chained, and I fell in love with the chain stitch, and it just kind of went crazy. So my book is sort of an allegory for life, and it, let me just get this out of the way here so I can see. So it kind of talks about what we do in life. So we kind of wander, right? And then we go off and we search, and then we branch off in our search, and we often get lost. And then we kind of take a leap and we plunge through the page, and we ultimately, hopefully, escape, but we are always saved by the little book at the end. And then the next book that I made was actually a love poem to my mom, Judy Patterson, who's also a member of NEBA. It's called Portrait of an Artist. And this is a long accordion book made on Japanese paper that I dyed with tea. My mom is an avid tea drinker. So I took photographs of her from throughout her life, as well as photographs of her self-portraits that she had done throughout different periods of her life, and put them in this accordion to kind of tell a story about her. And a lot of some of the pages are blank as well. And then I gave it to her and I wrapped it. I wanted to put it in a beautiful little box. And so I found this Japanese company that makes boxes. And we had this like amazing email conversation back and forth with them. And they were so excited to be able to make a box for a specific person. And they were so touched by my story. So we just had this great conversation. And then they made this little box to my dimensions. And they included this wrapping cloth, and the whole box and the woven tape and the cloth, all of it, and shipping was $22, which was, I couldn't make it for that. So, and so I just continued taking like lots of courses to learn all different kinds of structures, and kind of, I feel like I'm at the moment just kind of loading up my utility belt so that I'll have all kinds of different techniques at my ready when I'm ready for them. And I've been doing lots of different art methods and book structure. So these are just a few of the journals that I've been working on.
These are gorgeous.
No, thank you. And then the next few slides I'm going to go through quickly because it's just basically showing how one simple fold can be made into lots of different kinds of books. And so this is the first one. And this was structure that I made with Stephanie. I've taken several courses with Stephanie as well. And then the next one, if you attach them a different way, you get your little star. And this is a stamp that I carved of Ruth Ginsburg. So it's all about her.
We love that one.
This was helping me come to
before.
terms when she had passed away. So,
Yeah.
and then this is just all security envelopes. Each page is a different pattern. And what I love about this book is when you take the lid off, the whole book just explodes like a can of worms. But it's tiny. It's a small little book. And then this book I made with Susan Porter. And this is her pop-up journals. And so, and again, it's the same simple fold on watercolor paper that we painted. And then we had just gone to the Galapagos. And so I turned it into a travel journal of our photographs and different artifacts from our trip. And then, let's see, then this is a Play with the Blues, which is a Jacob's Ladder. And these are cyanotypes that I had done. I love cyanotypes and I'm exploring more with them.
Who did you learn cyanotypes with?
I think I did a couple little online, like quick, short workshops, and then have just been experimenting with it.
Okay.
I haven't really learned officially how to do it. It's more trial and error. At the
They're
moment.
really nice.
Thank you. This is actually just done on newsprint that I had cut out. And when one side was more feathers and one side was lace. And then I'll show you my Wish You Were Here project, because I don't think I really talked about it with NEBA. And so I am kind of split between the coast and the country. So I live in Salem, but we've also been spending a lot of time in Walpole, New Hampshire. When our aunt was sick, we kind of moved there during the pandemic to take care of her. And so we've kind of been going back and forth. And I love both places. I love the country and I love the coast. And I think that's what I love the most about New England. And so I started with this little sketch, and then I photocopied it and did all kinds of color studies. And this was the final postcard, but I used the pochoir process with stencil so that each color is a stencil, or actually a stencil had two colors on it. So it's just a whole series of slow process. I don't recommend doing this for for so many postcards because it just took a really long time. And then I'm at the end. And then the other side, I did a cyanotype. And here they are in this part, they're in the sun, and then they're drawing in the laundry room. And then I made like each paragraph of the poem is what I really love. The first one is about Salem, and then the second one is the things that I really love about Walpole and the country. And then I printed it on trace paper and then attached it over the cyanotype.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Thank you. And then for the structure, I wanted it to look like, an envelope. And on the cover, I took all of the postcards I received and I made a collage in the address label. And then I have Christina's logo up in the stamp. And then I took, you can't really quite see it here, but there are Tyvek travel luggage tags that I cut, and I attached the postcards to them, and then I made them into signatures. So I have 3 signatures, and that's how I attached the postcards into the book. and then I did the long stitch and I cut it out so you could see the map.
When we were at the Zine Fest at the NEBA table, in Watertown's public, free public library is how they call it, we could have sold your book that you had on display like 5 times. People were like totally wanting that book so badly. Yeah, it just is so compelling in person. It's got a real crispness about it that's really nice.
The cover is made from Craft Tech.
Mm,
So it's kind of a
Craft
the
Tech,
paper
okay.
leather
yeah.
kind of material, which is really nice to work with.
Mm.
And the next book is actually one of my favorites. I'm from Salem, so this is the Halloween capital of the world. And Halloween 2020 was the scariest Halloween, I think, ever, because it was right before the election. So I had to deal with it in some way. So this is trick or treat, and then I have all my little Halloween creepies that are sticking out of the book, and then the Halloween creepies that are inside the book. And in the middle, of course, is the coronavirus, and I have all the little creepies kind of hanging off those flags. And then we have the two presidential candidates at that time.
Oh, Susan, this is a real graphic treat. Oh my gosh. Total treat. Brilliant.
Thank you.
I
It helps.
love its childlike quality.
Well, there was a reason for that.
So does it open like a flag book?
It is a flag book, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Oh.
made this with in Stephanie's class as well.
Very nice.
And then the next 3 books are the 3 books that are on display at the Books on the Verge in Bridgeport, Connecticut, that Chris Perry has put together. And the first book is a collaborative book that I did with the Kaleidoscope group that Susan Porter started. And we're a group of 12 women that we meet once a month, and we well, initially we brought a book with a theme, and then gave it to the next person who would have a month to work in that book and that theme. And the book I brought was this, which they weren't too happy with me because it's very tiny. But I really wanted to explore making tiny books, and I loved the symbolism of having all of these individual matchboxes that are connected together, hinged together, which is just like the 12 women who are all completely different, and yet we're all hinged together by our love of art and love of books. And so each person then took the theme of matches and created their own take on what that theme meant to them inside 1 or 2 of these little matchboxes. So my book, the first one, is just kind of explaining what Kaleidoscope is and who the artists are and what their themes were for that particular year. And we are now going into our 4th year, which is hard to believe. And then my book was called Match Pairs, and I matched different things that are paired together, like cats and mice and birds and bees and things like that, and did little drawings. It's just a teeny tiny little Coptic stitch book.
Oh, wonderful. And
But it
is
was-
that a cheese box that it's in?
Yes, it's in a cheese box. Yep. And the diversity of the interpretation of the themes was just really stunning. You know, people who would do the eclipse, and then I think Susan, you did the matchmakers, and there was just, you know, matchbox cars and all kinds of things. It was really, really wonderful.
Really exciting. What a great collaborative.
Yeah, but every
project.
month
I
they
was gonna
cursed
say,
me.
now that you've been doing it for 4 years, it must just be getting better all the time, because it's the same set of people, correct?
Right.
So you're starting to get to know each other better. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
lovely.
we created
honey.
a really strong bond, which is nice.
Lovely.
Yeah. And the next books are the books from the sea. And these, I was looking at thinking about climate change and or not just climate change, but just the impact that humans are making on the forests. And in the future, what if there are no trees? With the forest fires and the droughts and the too much rain, not enough rain, and deforestation, what's going to happen to books? And I thought we'll have to go to the sea and we'll make books from seaweed. So I thought, well, let's see if we can make books from seaweed. So I took nori wrappers and I took seaweed snacks, little snacks, and I was kind of experimenting with them to see what you could do with them. And then I also collected a bunch of seaweed at the beach down the street from me, and I pressed it and dried it. So these are the materials that I used for the books. And then I made 3 different kinds of books. I made a flag book where I used the nori wrappers, which fold beautifully. I really like working with the nori. It just has a really nice quality to it when you fold it. The little snack ones, I didn't like so much because they're full of oil. And so I really had to try, you put them in paper towels and underweights and try to get all of that oil out of them. And it also, this is a very odoriferous box. It smells really bad, very intense. So then the flags are those little treats. And then it's hard to see it, but like when the light goes through them, they're really almost like stained glass. And I would put I cut out circles and things to give the more depth to the flags.
And it looks like it's in a very narrow wooden box.
Yeah, it's in a cigar box.
Cigar box.
Yeah, and so the book kind of represented how books used to be made from the trees. It's kind of like a little shrine to the tree. And then inside the papers are those are the deli paper sheets that I used when I was inking or the seaweed to make prints. So some of the images are printed seaweed, and some are actual seaweed as well. So those are the leftover pages that I used to line the box. And then the second book is a perfect binding paperback, and I used a pleated nori sheet as the cover. And then inside are a whole pack of those little snacks, and I had cut out the circles in random patterns on the pages. And then the third book is a Coptic stitch book. And I used the book board and glued the seaweed to the book board for the covers to give a little more durability. And it was really hard to sew through and I used nori wrappers for the sections. And I had to reinforce the nori wrappers because
it looks like you have the metal
grommets. Yeah,
grommets, that's the word, yes.
Yep.
And they're really attractive.
Yeah. And so the text in this book says, as the sea rises and the trees die due to climate change, books will be made from the seaweed. Then the third book is called Steeped. And it's in, I made a little shrine for the book, which is really a little shrine for women. The book is, well, I'll talk about the shrine first, I guess. In the shrine, up in these little square niches, I have things that represent women. So I have a shell, which happens to be a lady slipper. I have a geode that kind of shows that our beauty is really inside us. And then I have a dried flower. In this case, I chose the poppy, so that we'll never forget how far we've come as women, but how far we still have to go. And inside the seed head and inside each of us are the seeds to make the world better for the next generation, to kind of do what we can. The seeds are there, whether we take advantage of them, try to make it better for the next generation. And then on the opposite side is a stamp that I carved of a symbol of women, and I made a little frame for it out of grocery bag pulp. So I had taken grocery bags and chopped it up and turned it into pulp and made it into a frame. And then the book itself is made from grocery bag and tea bags. And I embroidered symbols for women from different cultures and different times to kind of show our strength in the hardships that we've been through. So that is my little steeped book.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh,
And then
What is the scale? Is it a tea bag scale?
that's a
this,
tea bag.
Yeah,
It's a
that is a
small-
tea
it's a
bag
tiny
scale.
little
Okay,
book.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, it's light,
It's
little.
tiny. Yep.
and
Very
it's a
tiny.
pocketbook.
Yeah, you can carry it around. Yeah, it's smaller than a
I
pocketbook.
mean, like a handbag.
And you got the little
Handbag, yeah.
Venus de
Little miniature
Milo
handbag.
with the safety pin there too. I like
Yeah.
her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Venus de Willendorf, rather.
Right. Yeah, and then the end sheets are those are dryer sheets.
Oh, so now that book's gonna smell better.
Better than the seaweed.
Yes.
For sure.
Go back
Um,
up one. Go back up one slide.
So here's the little book here.
Yes.
Is there like a little hook or something that it's hanging
Yeah,
from?
it's hanging on a hook up here. Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Wow.
Very nice.
Nice.
I love the cover too.
Thank you.
How did you did you stamp the word steeped on the tea bag? How did that get into the tea bag the way that is letter by letter?
I put it through the printer. So I took the tea out
Oh.
of the bag and then put it through the printer and then put the tea back in the bag.
Get out of here. Wow.
How can you put a tea bag through your printer?
That's how I did my mom's book too.
Did you
I
tape it to
printed
like a
all of
leader
those
sheet?
photographs. So you print it out on a piece of paper so you know where the image is, and then I just taped the tea bag over that where I positioned it where I wanted it over that image, and then send it through again.
Yeah, so you use it's called a leader sheet, LEADER, and you just tape it down and send it back through, and you use the same sheet so you know exactly where you need to put it.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Smart.
It's very
too.
easy to do. Yeah.
Smart.
I'd be afraid my tea bag would end up in the center of my printer.
You have to, well, you flatten it out and you
Yeah.
tape the leading edge. Or you
Yeah.
even, I think I taped to the sides as well, so that would say
Yeah.
flat.
You could get jammed on. You could jam it by accident, but if you tape it properly, it should work out. I've done it with things. Yeah.
All right, we'll experiment on your printer then.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine, you
Yeah.
can. No worries.
I love that. Because
Thank
I
you.
have a stamping set that I want to hammer in letters individually, you know. This is a nice way to do it too. It's really
Image
great.
transfer could be done too. You'd flip it backwards, so that when it comes, you do the transfer.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop.
Susan, does your printer print, when the paper goes through your printer, does it go flat like an Epson, or it scrolls around?
It
Does that make
scrolls
sense?
around.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Wow.
Yep, it comes up and through. It works.
That
Very-
image on the inside front cover that you said represents woman,
Yeah.
that you have in the pulp frame.
This one, yep.
Yeah, what are those? I mean, it's split into two, and what's the image on the top and what's the image on the bottom?
It's one image. Let me see if I can make it bigger for you.
It's a woman with their arms up.
Is it her? Yeah, the woman's arms are up, and then there's just a swirl at her belly and down, separating the legs.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Would help if I make. Can you see it if I enlarge it? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, for gosh sakes. Anyway, yeah, it's really interesting what you see and what you don't see. Yeah, but I see it now. Okay.
No worries. And then these are a couple little, my cat is unhappy, but that's okay. You might hear him in the
Aw.
background. These are little plaster books that I made. This one has all botanical printing to cart back to Lorraine's, which I really love doing as well. And then these are little mica windows that this one has a Queen's Anne's lace in it. And then these are like little mica shingles that I glued on the back cover. So I've been exploring
Made of what?
mica.
Mica.
Wow.
These seem like we need to see them in person to fully appreciate them.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
it's
I
not,
love,
yeah,
I love mica and it's so delicate.
it is
It's
very
just like
delicate. And they
peels,
make really
peels,
cool
peels.
windows.
So are you putting plaster on bookboard?
I am. Yeah, I use the like the plaster strips like for a cast,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
put
Yeah. I've seen people do this before. Yeah, it's
modeling
lovely.
paste on top. Yeah. And then the book I'm working on now, I'm doing another round robin with a different group. This one is, there are 5 of us in different parts of the United States, and we were each given a book. And I was given this World Masterpieces, which is quite a thick book, and the pages are super thin. It had no front or back cover. And so I had to somehow come up with a way to stabilize it. So I glued a number of the front pages and the back pages together to create harder covers. And then I decided, since it's definitely mended book, it needs a cast. So I plastered it on the front and the back, but not on the spine, so that the spine would stay flexible. I kind of strengthened the spine with another piece of Japanese paper. And then I put cheesecloth on it, so it kind of gave the sense of plaster, and a little tiny bit of plaster just to give the sense that it's a little bit like the mended, like the rest of it.
Yeah, I think you did a nice job with the transition there. It looks good.
Really
Yeah.
nice.
And then we call ourselves the Robins, so I put a little robin on the cover. And then inside I have, and these are end pages that I had marbled. And then for the title page, again, I have my 5 little robins, and then the name of the 5 artists. And we have about 7 different themes that we're working on. And we're working on the book for however many we want, and then mail it off. And I think we'll probably do it twice, because it's a little bit too much to try to do all 7 in a month or so.
Yeah.
But it's been fun, and it's a great group of women, another great group of women.
Wow.
So that's what I'm currently working on. That's where I am.
Fantastic.
Cranking these out. So let me just be clear. You take this book and you all rotate these books among you, right? So this doesn't stay with you and you don't finish it. It goes, yeah. It's amazing.
There it is. I'm trying to find the button.
Oh, beautiful, Susan.
Thank you.
So inspiring. I know you need to look
Thanks.
at your chat too. And Susan Porter is here, so she knows about how good you are. Love the plaster cast idea. Where do you get something like that? Like a medical supply store?
CVS.
You can get them anywhere. Really anywhere, or
Really?
Amazon. Yeah.
I think
CVS.
CVS or Walgreens has it too.
Yep, they have them too. They're just little rolls, and you add water, and then you just put them on. It's really cool to experiment with.
Boy, if kids knew that, you'd have kids walking around with finger plasters, and that's really cool.
They would probably plaster their arm to get out of something, right?
Absolutely. That's our secret. I love these, really great. And the simplicity, there's a thoughtfulness and a simplicity together that makes them just sparkle. Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank
I
you.
want to be able to
all.
touch that plaster with my hands though. So It
Yeah,
looks great in the
it's very
pictures, but
tactile, which
I'm
is
sure
really nice.
it would be something else in person entirely. Yeah. Lovely,
That little,
lovely kind of
I have one more,
kismet with the different styles
yeah, the
today. So I
three
loved how
together, just,
everybody worked out together nicely.
it was like it was somehow planned. Um, the little frame that you put around the robin on the cover of the plaster book did you make that with pulp again and then cover it, or did you
No, it
just
was just the
take
plaster.
the plaster?
Yeah, it was just the, the gauze, the
Yeah,
plastic gauze.
really neat.
I like your way of working with materials in new ways, which I think is strong throughout your work as well.
Yeah,
Definitely.
really, the experimentation is really wow. All three of you, again, hit them out of the park. Anyone who hasn't done this, these are like the highlights of my life, coming to these meetings and seeing what you all are doing. I don't want to miss a single one. I'm really glad I'm organizing them so I don't miss a single one.
Well, we're glad you're doing it too.
Very,
Thank
very
you
glad. Yes.
so
Yeah,
much.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I just want to say I don't ever want to make another book. I just want to look at people's books. Other people.
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think that's true.
Oh,
I
it
don't-
is.
I don't believe that for a second.
I have
What
like,
about the inspiration factor, Carolyn?
oh, I know, but I'm so inspired that I just can't even move. Yeah, I'm just paralyzed by awe. So, which is
Another great
inspiration.
show and tell, and we're thrilled that everybody came and stayed with us. Sometimes we go a little bit over our hour and 15 or so, but when we're having fun, it's hard to stop. And people are really
Don't want to.
sharing
Nope.
important aspects of their process and their heart and soul with us. So I enjoy hearing it.
Oh yeah. So what? An hour and a half, 2.5, 3.5 hours. Just can't get enough of this funky stuff. So
Yeah.
All the other ones are on the YouTube channel, and I'll post this video, edited obviously a little bit, but yeah.
and I want to thank all of you for coming. I know Stephanie, we've got you scheduled for future next season, and Karen Kirchhoff, I haven't met you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's say hi to, she's a new member, right? You're a new member.
You're a new member?
Karen is on our Kaleidoscope group.
Excellent, excellent.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Karen, you need to contact me so I can get you scheduled, okay?
I just sent a chat.
What was that?
I just sent you a chat.
Oh, excellent. Oh, well, I want to see your work too. You just got some street cred being included in Susan's group.
It's not my group, it's our group.
I like that.
You're
The
all
idea that it's still
launched it.
going after 4 times,
Yes.
that speaks volumes, because if it doesn't work out, nobody's gonna want to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And there's one of you is called Stary BB. I'm not sure who that is. Do we know who that is?
Yeah, that's my wife.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. All right.
Is it Terry? It's not Stary, it's Terry.
Right, her first name is Susan and her middle name is
Susan
Terry, which is
Terry.
what she
All
goes
right.
by.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for coming and supporting and staying through all this. And-
Absolutely,
oh,
yeah.
it's wonderful.
We're this is our last official meeting till the new year, and again we're renewing memberships and encouraging people to join us, and getting ready to do the inaugural push of the lending tool library. So we were gifted 2 presses, and you have to come pick them up. They're not giganto presses. They weigh about 50 pounds. They're like 10 by 12 to 11 by 15, the bases. So they're not out of control, and we're going to let people borrow them for a month or so and kind of pass them around. So people that are in the metro, Boston or Rhode Island or up into New Hampshire, people that are within a reasonable drive, or even if you just want to come up and say, hey, and pick it up from New York, if you happen to be up here,
And
We
it
have
does
these
happen.
lovely presses, and we're starting to gather other kinds of content for our lending library. So that's exciting for the new year, and we're going to keep adding new ideas. So we're excited, and we've
So thank
enjoyed
you all.
doing the show
Thank
and
you.
tell. So have a great holiday, happy new year, and we'll see you soon. We'll
Yeah,
be back
get
on
on the
track.
Thank you, everyone.
Get on
Thank
the
you
show
all.
and
This
tell
has been
bandwagon.
wonderful.
See you.
It was
Take
awesome.
care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.